Welcome back to Stroke Warrior Radio, where we catch the wave, warriors achieving victories every day. This is a place where stroke and brain injury survivors, caregivers, and professionals come together for conversations, real tools, and real hope. I'm your host, Ralph Ortiz, a stroke survivor myself, and today's conversation is a continuation of a powerful journey with an old friend of Stroke Warrior Radio, Simon Payne. How you doing, Simon?
Ralph, I'm really good. Great to see you as always. You did say an old friend. I'm not sure if I'm that old. I'm only 61. But I'll
I
take
think,
it. It's fine. At least I'm still here to talk about it.
yeah,
I'm doing really
I
well,
think
and
it's
it's always good
good
to
to
see you,
you.
sir.
Yeah, good to see you too. Welcome back to Stroke Warrior Radio. For joining us,
Cheers. Cheers, as they say here.
cheers. For those of us joining us for the first time, Simon is a driver safety and education specialist, course, course author, stroke recovery advisor, and the voice behind Stroke Smart 24/7. The last time we talked, we focused on your journey. Today, we're focusing on how that journey continues to evolve. Um, and remind our listeners, you had your stroke almost 11 years ago.
Yeah, 11 years ago this year on the 27th of November.
Okay. Since our last interview, what has shifted most for you? Internally, professionally, personally? I mean,
So
recovery evolves over time. What new insights have you gained?
a common thing in stroke, as you know, is this word plateau. We reach a certain point where we even off. And I've started to realize that the plateaus that we experience in terms of recovery are moments when we should reflect on what we've achieved.
Ah,
So
okay.
rather than seeing them as a bad thing that we're not progressing, think of it as a bit of a rest place to almost like put up camp like climbing Everest. You've got halfway houses and halfway camps. So in effect, having a stroke recovery model that you are kind of following, as it were, you are always going to hit plateaus where you're not progressing as quickly as you might want to. But that's because you're having to reflect on that success and maybe let it embed in your muscle memory of recovery. Because we know that the body and the brain connected have to have time to embed that learning and for us to be able to use it physically all the time. So what have I learned since our last conversation? I think I'm on the right track in terms of recovery, that I'm doing the right things in terms of physical and mental activity. Because when I look back on myself, even just a few months ago now, to where I am now, it's so good and so better for me that my words are coming back, my memory's improving, I have more energy, I have a greater understanding of what I'm doing to my body and why it's so good. So I suppose it's the plateau that I was speaking about. I've reached, and just to share with the audience that my sister, who was 4 years older than me, died in September last year. So that's another whole another thing that I've kind of had to deal with recently. But
Yeah.
my positivity and my belief systems have helped me overcome and deal with that situation. Because Leslie was my older sister and she was my rock that would look after me. And the reason I moved down here into Kent was for her to be my care, in effect, my support mechanism. But obviously Leslie, bless her, she had brain cancer caused by a head injury,
Oh my goodness.
and she deteriorated fairly quickly. However, her passing has put me onto a whole new path of understanding, really, which is it. Which again is an interesting kind of paradox in terms of yes, I'm grieving for the loss of my sister, but actually that's just. But passing is just another part of life, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And unfortunately, I think human society now across the world have kind of walked away from the death part of living, almost as a fear mechanism. We're frightened of dying because we're not sure what's going to be on the other side. But you know what? This thing that we live in, this human body, yes, it's like a classic car, it wears out. But I think you can do things earlier to help it live a very long life. And if we go back into antiquity, into the Egyptians and various other ancient civilizations, they were living for a very lot longer than 100 years old.
Yeah.
So I think we now can take a lot from ancient knowledge, where we, as the physical humans, can do things both mentally and psychologically that make us live better and live well. Because living a long time isn't necessarily the best thing. It's living a good time, if you like, I suppose you'd say it. So longevity, as opposed, is what I'm looking for now. So my whole thing about what I think about everything, every day I do something that's going to make me live to 108. I know what you're going to say. Why 108? The reason I use 108 is because it's a sacred number, and it's linked in numerology to a faith of greater things. It's a very spiritual number, and 108 for me is my target age. And
Like that.
I'm sure, Ralph, when we're both 108 and we're having this conversation, it'll be a very different conversation.
I'm sure it will be. Love that. You know, your career centers around safety and decision making. How does reshape the way you view risk? I mean, human performance, pressure. Are there insights that emerge post-stroke that weren't there before?
Sorry, I got the first bit of it. How does my view on risk affect how I recover? Is that what you're saying?
You know,
So, yeah, I think, I mean, the whole point of my degree that I took in psychology, which is about driving psychology and the way the human mind and the brain works, has been a really good foundation for me to base my understanding on. So,
okay,
for example, I use myself as an N of one. So everything I do is an experiment on me. But and obviously we know that not every stroke is the same, but you've got to start somewhere, haven't you?
right.
And what I have discovered is that generally, if you read all the books about self-development, they all come down to the one thing, which is about the mind. And as our own society's technology becomes better, we're now discovering that the mind isn't necessarily inside the brain; it's somewhere else. It's connected to somewhere. And this is getting a little bit woo now, forgive me, but you know, the mind that we have, this little voice in our between our ears that we sometimes listen to, is one of our greatest allies. One of the things that I have written in my book is about being your own best coach. So if you like, so I'm sure that you review your videos that you record on Zoom on a regular basis, and
Yeah,
you look at yourself and think, oh, I could have done that differently. That could have been different. But you do it from a almost like a helicoptering point of view, where you look at yourself outside, and that's a really important thing for us to be able to do videoing wise. We can see ourselves. But when you're inside the stroke, you can't always see the progress you make.
right.
And then one of the things that I've learned to do is to I suppose, almost like measure my success about things that I do on a regular basis. So having this conversation with you today is a really good measure for me that I could never have done this just after my stroke before. But look how far I've come. Look how far we've both come in terms of 11 years of recovery. We are, if you like, the hope for the people that have had strokes behind us.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
that's without blowing my own trumpet or boosting my ego. That's true, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
That
But the
we
truth
should
of the
be
matter
these.
is they told us this is as good as it's going to get, and it isn't. We have the opportunity to get
There's
better.
always that little extra bit.
Yeah. You've led some world-class teams in your employee and other things. How has growth changed your leadership style?
Forgive me, Ralph. I didn't hear that last little bit. Could you say that once more for me? I
You've
apologize.
led some world-class teams. How has your stroke changed your leadership style? What
Oh,
leadership style, what leadership
okay.
qualities do survivors already possess without realizing it?
So it's again an interesting thing how we adapt and we change for our circumstances. So I always consider myself to be a loving, caring person, but maybe I didn't realize before how important love is and how powerful love is. Forgive me, I'm going to turn my phone off. I do apologize, Ralph.
No problem.
You shouldn't be digging up. So love, we know, if you read all of the literature on love, love is one of the most powerful energies we possess. We demonstrate our love in lots of different ways. And it could be a smile, it could be waiting for someone to come through the door, a little bit of kindness for somebody, it could be giving somebody $1 on the street that may be homeless. That little bit of magic that you sprinkle on everybody around you is really, really quite a powerful thing to do. So one of the things I talk about in the resilience pyramid is about how to love yourself, not in a self-righteous way, but more about looking in the mirror and really appreciating and being grateful for what this body has done for you in terms of surviving. So your title of being a stroke warrior, you can only be a warrior if you're still here. So your body has helped you still be here. So for me, when I look in the mirror in the morning and wash and whatever shower, it's about a little bit of self-care and self-love. And that is a vitally important part about overcoming stroke.
Yeah.
Because we know that belief systems and the way that your mind thinks will drastically affect the way your body reacts. And that's been proven a million times by the placebo effect. If
Right.
your body thinks it's going to be ill because of something, you get a bit of a downturn. If you think you're not going to survive something, you're less likely to survive it. So for me, having this experience and what I used to do when I did leadership management training and driver risk training, I would look at it in quite an intellectual, scientific way. And what's happened since my stroke now is about I look at things in a more spiritual way. That is about more about us as magical beings. And I know that it's easy for me to say that now. I'm 11 years down the line, and there's other people just had a stroke that aren't. I get that. However, if you truly believe that you have the ability within this physical form to recover, you are more likely to recover more quickly.
Right.
And that is, I get it. If someone had said that to me 11 years ago, I'd have thought, oh, don't be silly. That's not possible. But I know it's possible because if I look at myself 11 years later, I'm in a much better place than I was before.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Well, you know, too, and I think a lot of us don't realize at some point we have to make the choice of are we going to be just a stroke survivor or are we going to be a stroke warrior? And choosing a warrior in my mind made me a better person all around,
Absolutely.
you know, spiritually and everything. You started Stroke Smart 24/7. What gaps were you seeing in stroke education? And was there a moment that you thought this is something that really matters? Why should I do this?
Well, one of the things is that I know with the stroke, it took away my identity or my perceived identity. So in terms of what I was as a company director, a company owner, I would have smart suits. I was a bit of an egotistical, ego-driven man, which some of us are, and I've become less ego-driven, if I'm honest. So what I'm saying is that in terms of being able to see me for who I am, this has been a fairly extraordinary event and a positive event, if I'm honest. And I would never recommend. And I know you wouldn't recommend having a stroke as a pastime or a way to be self-improved because it's really difficult. But what I have found is that by having a purpose with the YouTube channel or having discussions with you like this, what it's done is got back some of my identity. And so I think that for me, if when I talk to other stroke survivors, a lot of it is about how can they have what I have had over the last 11 years. If I could bottle it and give them a little bit of a sip of what I've had, I think that's beneficial to them to be able to see there is some hope in the future.
I agree. You know, you mentioned identity. How do you define identity after stroke? I mean, stroke reshapes it completely. What helped you let go of who you thought you were supposed to be? What was that aha moment that you said, no, this is way different than I expected?
I think it's when I took uh, control back. So obviously, when you have a stroke, you lose quite a lot of control over stuff that you can or can't do.
Right.
So when I started taking back a little bit of control over what I ate and what I do physically for myself, and forgive me, I keep saying because I'm fatigued a little bit at the moment, so I'm going to stop saying now. I've just told myself I'm going to stop saying
No
So
worries.
one of the things that I've recognised is that everything I do during the day, this included, is another little step to recovering fully. My ability to listen to myself speak and having spaces between the sentences and the words is another part of my recovery, that I need to speak clearly and to listen to what I'm saying and to see the words to be able to use my voice. So if I can do that and can take control back of that tiny little bit of me, that's Simon coming back again. So we know we all like nice things in life. We all like the posh things in life. We can't all afford them, but we like that. So sometimes it's about treating yourself to nice things in life, whether it be a soak in the bath, or whether it be having a shower every day, getting yourself clean, having a proper shave, wearing nice clothes, whatever it might be. Treat yourself with respect and kindness. Your body will thank you as well, because this thing that we live in is an organism that responds really well to love and to kindness. And that kindness and love doesn't have to come from outside; it can come from inside.
Great.
How you speak to yourself, how you tell yourself off if you have a bit of a down day. And it's sometimes quite difficult to pull yourself together to get out of that rut you might be in. But that's the time when you need to be your own best coach. That's the time when you need to be saying, Simon, take a moment, take a breath, think about that differently and do it next time. So that's a really valuable thing that I've learned, that I can almost talk to myself internally and become stronger for it. But nobody
Yeah.
ever had that conversation with me back then. And it's something I've learned and discovered over time.
Yeah. From a safety perspective, and I hope you don't mind, your background's a lot in safety. From a safety perspective, what do survivors underestimate?
Um, I think they underestimate the fatigue and the tiredness and the amount of energy it takes to recover. We know that the human brain is a little bit like a food vampire. It takes all the energy out of your body. 20% of what you eat is taken by the brain. Although the brain only takes up about 2% of your body weight, it demolishes 20% of the intake of your food, your energy. So when you're trying to recover from a stroke and a brain injury, whatever that brain injury might be, your brain is working overtime to recover and repair. So one of the underestimations, not only for the survivor themselves, but also their family and their carers, their caregivers, sorry, they forget that tiredness isn't what they're experiencing. We're experiencing extreme fatigue that makes us just completely out of it. We can't even think straight, let alone function properly. So we know that even you and I having this conversation now, we will be waiting for about half an hour after it because of the amount of effort it takes to think about what we're saying. But it becomes easier every day by doing it and by practicing it. So by pushing yourself on the edge of the cliff and looking over and doing something every day to make you a little bit stronger, by the end of the week, by the end of the year, you are better for it. And uh, and I think also the journey that we go on is more important than the destination, if that makes any sense.
That's bullshit. I've always believed that.
Yeah, what we're going through is actually a really valuable learning experience. Tough, but it's a learning experience. There are some incredible, I mean, for you and for I, there are incredible opportunities to meet new people. And I, even with the elders from the church, they are almost over caring for me in terms of my wheelchair. I'm sitting in a wheelchair now. So I say that my wheelchair that I sit on is my superpower.
Mm.
Let me explain that properly. My superpower in as much that I can go up to anybody in the street and say, "Good morning, how are you? Nice day, isn't it?" And they have to respond in kind because I'm in a wheelchair. And again, it's not something I would recommend, but you know what? It is a bit of a superpower. That
Yeah, I like
I am
that.
no threat to anybody. I'm in no threat to when I say hello and good morning to people, and I do that deliberately to try and get a response because that's who I am. Um, I know that they don't feel threatened by me. Even to the point that I can go up to any dog in the street and put my hand down, and they will sniff my hand and be completely fine. And, because I'm sitting down, I'm not a threat. So it's
Yeah.
an interesting thing how this wheelie thing that I'm sitting in is actually quite a superpower to have.
The thought process to make it a superpower,
Well,
that's
again,
amazing.
another thing is about that thing in there is actually changing it around completely into a positive experience, not a negative experience. So I'm not, forgive me, Ralph, I can't remember whether we discussed it before in our first interview, is about a mindset issue, is about we live in victimhood or survivor mode. So if you're a victim, and none of us, we are not victims, we know that, but that's deliberately a choice, we're not a victim. But if you live in victimhood, then everything's against you, everything's bad for you. And it's not, it's an opportunity to grow.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really important thing that we have to, as survivors, and now we are 11 years down the line as survivors, we can tell other people that, yes, it is hard and it's scary and all that other stuff, but we know that there is hope at the end of the tunnel and that we can get there.
Yes.
We can improve day by day by day by day, and you will be a better person than you were before. If if
I,
we if we truly believe that we are souls, spiritual souls living a physical life, what wonderful souls we're going to be after this experience. Like pebbles on a beach, Ralph, we are shiny and smooth after all the waves of experience in life. Yeah.
yes.
Again, quite a visual thing to say, but that's what I believe. That all the
I,
sharp edges that I had before is gone.
yeah. Well, and I often say, and stroke recovery has been the most difficult thing I've done in my life, but it
Mm.
became the most rewarding thing.
It is odd,
You
that
know,
isn't it? Yes.
yeah,
And,
it has become.
and that's not BS. That is real, isn't it? That's real.
Yeah, people look at me like, "What? You nuts?" Nuts?
It's
No,
real.
my daughter told me after I visited her after several years, "Dad, you're a much better person than you were before the stroke."
Hmm.
So
I
I
believe
mean,
that.
it has become rewarding. What other adaptations make the biggest real world difference in your opinion?
What other? Forgive me.
Adaptations make a real world biggest real world difference. Adaptation.
I absolutely believe that by considering every action, physical action that we do as part of the recovery process, then it becomes almost like functional therapy, that functional exercise. So, like in this week, because of my moving into a smaller place, I've had to downsize. So I have a collection of books that are bending shelves on my walls every day. So I've had to downsize my library, if you like. So part of that is about me using that exercise to move the books and things into chronological order and to alphabetical order. So for me, that's a way of me doing something that I have to do because it needs to be done. No one else is going to do it. That is something, just one thing that's going to make me stronger tomorrow. I am fatigued from doing it and very tired, but that's a good thing for tomorrow because I can do it again and I feel better because I'm building up the strength as we go along.
Yeah, you won't be as fatigued tomorrow doing the same thing.
Indeed. It's
Yeah.
like every muscle in your body, if you work it, it will get stronger.
When you're talking to other survivors, how do you recommend to other survivors to better advocate for themselves?
Um, I think I've always said, and even more so now, is about speaking your truth and being who you authentically doing being you. If you don't feel good and you want to sleep, then you do that. So I think it's about being honest with whoever's giving you that care at that time, not in an aggressive or negative way, but just being completely honest about who you feel you are and what you're experiencing at that point. Because that caregiver isn't going to know what you're feeling inside because they're not experiencing it. Like
Right.
we said, the tiredness compared to fatigue is a massive difference. And I think that that's about being genuinely authentic and honest with yourself and with your caregivers. If you need to rest because your brain is recovering and it will need to rest, that's what you tell people. I am, if we talk about the resilience pyramid, if you go into the army, you need to build resilience. So part of the philosophy of the services is to break you down so you grow better.
Right.
Now, what I've done within my book is about, and another chapter is called the resilience pyramid, which is about setting the groundwork firstly. So if you imagine like the base of a pyramid is built on massive stones. So those massive stones in terms of resilience are your macro behaviors.
Right.
So a macro behavior is something you do that's like getting proper rest. Being your own best coach is a macro behavior. And you can imagine that on top of those large stones, you've got the smaller stones building up to a pyramid. The smaller stones, the smaller little micro behaviors reinforce what the macro behavior is. So if we say that being your own best coach is a macro behavior, within that is going to be micro behaviors about the words that you use to say, Simon, Ralph, you could have done that differently. Tomorrow, let's try a different approach. So if you have that mindset where you're talking to yourself internally about what you've done and how you've done it and why you've done it, and so well done, Simon, you did a nice bit of cooking tonight. That little thing is actually quite good for your body. So,
Yeah.
uh, sorry, Mel, carry on.
But, which, um, probably the biggest insight you wish you had known earlier.
Simply, it's about self-love and self-care.
Okay. Okay.
I,
Would
I,
why?
I wasn't one to listen to my body very much
Yeah, me either.
because I was chasing the dollar, because I was chasing success, what I thought was success. I kind of missed the important things that about me in this physical being. That actually I needed to sleep more, I needed to get rest more, I need to spend more time being happy, whereas I wasn't happy at the time. So I think I'm a lot happier now than I was before because of the relationships I have with my family, my friends, and my loved ones. My relationships are more colourful, I suppose you'd call it, in terms of love. That I am a much nicer person than I was before. And I was never a bad person. Don't get me wrong. I was never not horrible. I was
Well,
always
yeah,
loving
yeah.
and I was always a hugger. But in terms of truly seeing somebody and being present for them, I do that a lot more. And that has come from learning about about taking back ownership of me and being able to change me to become Simon 2.0, become a better Simon. So yeah, I'm
Well,
kind of oddly grateful.
yeah, and there's got to be some willingness to be open to recognize those feelings as well.
I think that's true. And curiosity, Ralph, is a real important part of recovery. But
Ah,
if you remain curious about what your body can achieve, you're more likely to achieve it and more likely to try it. So my curiosity has led me to become a bit of a chef. I love to cook now. And the thing that I'm doing most now is to investigate different ingredients and the superpowers that the ingredients have. Who knew green tea was so important to drink? So green tea, true green tea, has something called EGCG in it. An amino acid compound. It's epigallocatechin.
Okay.
Epigallocatechin. In simple terms, it's a plant-based nutrient that actually promotes the growth of neurotransmitters in your brain. In fact, not just transmitters, it promotes the growth of neurons. So we know that the hippocampus part of our brain, because of memory, grows new neurons. We know that the brain generally can grow its new neurons. So for people like us, the stroke survivors like us, we need to have as much in our bodies and our bloodstream that helps us grow new neurons. So my whole thing about cooking now is everything I cook is a superfood. Whether that be dark chocolate, like 80% dark chocolate, whether it be green tea, whether it be even spicy food with cinnamon and turmeric, is all about reducing the inflammation inside the brain after the injury. And again, it's a discovery for me that I would never even have foreseen when I was 11 years ago.
Yeah, I'm raising your own curiosity.
Yeah. And you know when your parents said to you, eat your greens or
Yeah,
else, they were right. That's exactly what we should be. We should be eating dark green cruciferous vegetables that have incredibly powerful polyphenols in.
yeah,
That little thing, that little gem of information that I picked up because of what I'm doing now, my curiosity to see how it works, has given me the control back on my recovery. The fact that I'm talking to you now so animatedly is because I'm on a bit of a high because of the food I've eaten. Whether they
okay.
say high on your own supply, I think is the old 60s term, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
So that if I could give any information to other stroke survivors, it would be curious about what your body can do and trust it to do its thing because it will. As soon as you go into it, won't. It's not going to happen. It's taking too long. If you have that victim mentality, it isn't going to change. Believe it, it can happen. And it is
Yeah,
the most important thing in the world to believe that you are a superhuman.
yeah. You
It's,
actually answered my next question. What would you say to survivors who feel like they're behind? You know?
it's sometimes quite tricky not to compare yourself to other people. And
Yes,
of course, you and I now on this video is we are comparing ourselves or letting others to compare themselves to ours. We don't mean to do that. What we're trying to do is to show an example of what you can achieve if you put your mind to it.
yeah,
But I think as human beings generally in our societies, certainly Western societies, we are very much comparing ourselves to others all the time because that's what we're marketed as. So if you look at car manufacturers, they sell cars on the fact that it's going to make you a better person if you buy our brand of car. We know that's not true, but we kind of get brainwashed into it. So the fact that you and I might have to run marathons anymore doesn't make us any less people than the people that are running marathons.
correct.
What we have to offer the world is very different to others and possibly even more powerful than others.
Yeah, yeah. And recoveries aren't linear. I mean, we can't, what I do to recover may not work for you. But the fact of
Absolutely.
the matter is, what will work for you, and my humble opinion, what will work for you is my mindset that I'm going to do this. And that's
Indeed.
what happened, you know. I don't use a cane anymore. I don't use a walker anymore. You know, because up here I said, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, indeed.
No. What message do you have for caregivers?
Be patient,
Okay.
be loving, be kind. And that is both in word and in action.
I'm
Because
gonna,
I know from my own experience that having to care give to a stroke survivor that isn't the person that you once knew can be quite frustrating and quite challenging. And I explained to you on our first meeting about my wife at the time of my stroke couldn't cope with me being in a wheelchair or being the different person that I am. Although having said that, 11 years later, I'm probably better now than I was then.
Yeah.
The thing about being a caregiver is incredibly challenging, and it also changes your relationship with that person. Because as a parent, you want the best for your children all the time because you know they're going to grow up to look after themselves. And I suppose it's finite in terms of having to give that care. Although you never stop loving your children, when you have a stroke survivor that is struggling to stay awake when you're having a conversation or can't walk straight lines, it is quite challenging and it's frustrating. But I think that the biggest message is that you are as an important part of that recovery as that person is. The way that you treat that person, the way you speak to them, the way you smile at them in the morning, you need to empower them rather than caregive them. So empowerment is one of the greatest things that you can do for a stroke survivor.
And communication is a big part of the caregiver patient relationship because
And there are no lists for that, Ralph. Maybe that's the next chat we have is
yeah,
how do we prepare? What's the toolbox for a caregiver?
yeah, exactly. There's nothing out there about that.
Write that down, Ralph. Write that down. We're going to use that for the next meeting.
There you go.
The caregiver's toolbox.
I love that. I think what I often see is care partners that do too much for the survivor and survivors that take advantage of a care partner. So there's got to be an open communication there on what's wanted and what's needed.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
those are two very different things.
And sometimes that stroke survivor may not actually be able to communicate that effectively to that person.
Exactly.
Or conversely, the caregiver isn't listening enough or observing enough because we know that observation is as powerful as listening.
Well, and that's the survivors. We have to stop being so damn stubborn about, I don't want to feel, I don't want to be a burden. Get over yourself.
Push the ego to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's wrap up with a couple things. First, couple quick questions. One word that defines your recovery today.
Enlightening.
Ooh, good word. A daily habit that grounds you.
Meditation.
Do you really?
I do, absolutely. And breathing.
Oh, okay. I have a hard time getting into the meditation. I'm trying, but I have a hard time with it.
Do you do any kind of breathing technique, Ralph?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
You do? Do you do the box breathing, the 4-4-4, or do you have a different number?
I do that. What is it? 7-4-8?
I do a 4-5-7-8. I do, so it's similar.
Yeah, it's good. Calm myself.
It's really quite. So I have found that because there's a guy, an Irish guy, professor on pulmonary medicine, that has written a book about breathing and the breathing effects on the bloodstream. So just as a clarification for our audience, when you breathe properly through your nose, especially, your nasal passages and the breathing passages filter the oxygen. And in fact, when you breathe through your nose properly, certainly when you're meditating and breathing through your nose, like the 4-5-7-8, what it does, it allows the alveoli in your lungs to expand and make more oxygen. So, of course, as a brain injury survivor, the more oxygen you get to your brain, the quicker it's going to recover because the blood flow there is better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So
Cool.
there's quite a lot of research into breathing techniques in terms of how, even now in nature pictures, nature films, they have divers that free dive. They don't use air tanks because it's the bubbles.
Right.
Because when you've got bubbles floating, the whale and the things you're trying to film will be scared and they fly away. However, you now have free divers that don't have any oxygen tanks. They just free dive. They just take a really big breath and they can hold their breath for 7 minutes because the lungs are full of oxygen. Where normally, if you stop breathing for 7 minutes, you become brain dead.
Right.
But there is a technique now that you can make your lungs and your brain absorb all the oxygen out of the bloodstream because you're filling it with oxygen. So there's another thing that when you stop breathing, that the body produces more carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is a vasodilator. So it makes the vessels slightly expand, which means the blood flow goes more freely to the blood and to the brain and to the lungs. So just by changing your breathing technique, you are helping your blood supply and your blood flow to flow more. It reduces blood pressure, it reduces heart rate. It's so good for you to breathe properly through your nose in a rhythmic way before sleep and during sleep. We know that people with sleep apnea who have problems where they wake up because they're not breathing properly are more likely to have strokes and heart attacks. So if you can preemptively do your breathing technique like we've mentioned, you are actually preventing more problems later on down the line. But also it's helping your recovery by getting the right amount of oxygen going through your blood system. And again, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm by no means am I a doctor or a GP. I've just done lots of reading and research. And
Yeah.
as I said before, I'm an N of one. I'm a research project on the go. But it's really interesting stuff that by finding out this information, I've got back control over my recovery. That has given me again.
Very cool.
I am the person I wanted to be all along.
Last quick question, Fire. A misconception about stroke you want to shatter.
Misconceptions. We're not drunk. We are stroke survivors. And we understand what's going on. We may not be able to verbalize it coherently all the time. However, that will come back with practice. We just need to be allowed the space and the time to allow it to practice.
Beautiful.
Time is everything.
Yeah. Where can listeners connect with you and Stroke Smart 24/7?
So the website, if they just type in on YouTube, Stroke Smarts 24/7, the Smarts is with the Z, SMARTZ, 24/7, 24/7, and you'll see my ugly mug on there saying hello. And it's something because I have this purpose, I have this drive now to put more stuff on there. That's my plan for this year. Now I've moved to this beautiful new apartment. I'm going to do a lot more. Every month I'm going to post a new video based on my chapters of the book, which will all be about how do we put this stuff we're talking about into practice. It's all very well for you and I to say this is what's going to happen, this is what you should do, but without the knowledge and without the support to do that, it's really quite tricky. What I'd also like to do, I think, as well, is to develop something a little bit bigger than that. That the YouTube and with your support as well, our collaboration will help others either avoid it, firstly, not have a stroke in the first place. It's funny, I had a conversation. I'm going to just go off at a bit of a tangent, Ralph. Forgive me. So I had a conversation with my local MP, the local member of Parliament here in Ashford, in Kent. And my whole thing now is the future of healthcare is self-care. So you know that our respective countries have issues with our healthcare systems in its own way, both through funding and through systems in place. So the conversation I had with my MP was about how do we support people not to get sick in the first place. So wouldn't it be lovely that we become the victims of our own success where we don't need to have NHS or we don't need to have our Medicare? If we had people that didn't get sick, which is possible, we don't have to get sick. If we could have a world, a bit of a utopia, I know, but if we had a world where people didn't get sick, it wouldn't be an issue. That's possible. We get people that live to 150, 130 years old, They could be living,
108, right.
they could be living well and living for a long time. And I know,
Right.
and I know that the medical people watching this will think, what a load of rubbish. But you know what? If you don't set the bar high, you don't get anywhere.
Exactly. Get halfway to that high bar, you've achieved something.
Absolutely. It says in the Bible about that we live for 70 and 10. Let's double that. Because
Yeah,
even in the book of, even is it book of Abraham or book of Enoch, that I think they were saying about people live to 130 years old.
Abraham, I believe.
Even in the Bible, it says that people can live to be very old.
Yep.
And we're supposed to be developing as a species. We're supposed to be getting more intelligent and getting better able.
Yeah.
And we don't need to have mechanical implants to live longer. We don't have to have Elon Musk's new neural thing, new network or whatever. Although I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be that. We can look at things that are more naturalistic for us,
Yeah. Yeah.
both in terms
Absolutely.
of the way the body works and what we eat and the way we sleep.
We're getting close to our end. What final reminder would you like to leave with the Stroke Warrior Radio community?
I love you. You are powerful. You are strong, and you can do this. Every person that's had a stroke will say the same thing. Yes, it's a little bit of hard work, but you can get better. If you believe you can, you will.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Simon. Recovery is not a straight line, everybody. Growth is not always visible. Wisdom often comes through experience we never asked for. This is Stroke Warrior Radio. Pitch the wave. That's warriors achieving victories every day. Thank you, Simon.
Lots of love, mate.